Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new movie review, and today we'll be discussing the new Lionsgate sci-fi thriller film by the name of Voyagers, which will be coming to theaters this Friday, April 9th. Now, I got the chance to check out the film early, courtesy of Lionsgate, and I'm gonna let you all know what I thought about it, and if you all should check it out in this spoiler-free review. But before we dive into it, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts, which you can find those links in the description below. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in the comments below, let me know, number one, have you heard of this film? Have you seen the trailer of this movie? And of course, if you've seen it and you've taken the voyage to space with these characters, let me know your pros, your cons, and let's discuss the film in the comments below. So for those that aren't too familiar with this film, just the basic plot and outline. The film starts in 2063, and very early on, you find out, by go figure, there's a disease is going to take out humankind. So that kind of sparks this program in which we have these test tube babies who are given this task to voyage into space to inhabit this new planet. But here's the kicker, and this is in the trailer: this voyage, this journey is going to take 86 years, which means that those test tube babies will not be alive by the time they land on this new planet, which means that their task is, by the time they're 24, they have to have kids, and by the time their kids are 24, their grandkids are the ones who's going to be actually living on this planet. But on this voyage, when these test tube babies are 18, their true nature comes out. So starting this review off with my positives, I mention it every time I talk about a sci-fi film on this channel. I love sci-fi. I am a sucker for sci-fi because sometimes there's more reality than there is fiction into these stories that are being told. And that's where I want to kind of start this review off in regards to just the parallels of humankind and the human nature and how this film tackles that. First and foremost, it explores this idea that is very relatable in a sense of no one's born by choice, in a sense of when that child is born, they didn't choose to be born, right? And seeing these kids in this film that are just given this task of being kind of locked off to humankind or human interaction, they're just only given the interaction amongst their group of kids and Colin Farrell and a couple other adults, but they don't really know what it's like to grow up in the real world. They're literally shipped off to space when they're kids. So just the idea that they're given this huge responsibility of their future. They are the ones creating the future for humankind, but they won't even see what their mission kind of accomplished. They want to be able to see this new planet. So just that idea of how that can relate in parallel to the real world, right? We live in a society, right, where there are a lot of people that want to seek out better things for the future. But let's be honest, a lot of us live in the present and only care about our future, not our family's future or our, grandkids or grandkids' future. So there are just ways that we go about taking care of this earth that aren't that well. And again, this movie might be more reality than it is fiction. So there's a lot of kind of parallels within the real world, which kind of brings me to a really interesting parallel that I liked about this film. The idea of, we all know there's certain parents out there that really shelter their kids. And when those kids are going off to college, two things can happen. Either all the stuff that their parents have given them in regards to responsibility, rules, this, that, and the other, being good citizens of humankind, then they go into school and they kind of have those traits, those personality traits that kind of maybe limit them to opportunities in life. And then there's the other side of the coin where as soon as that kid walks out of the door and they go to college, they're wilding out. And I'm talking about in this film, we see the true nature of these 18-year-olds with sex, greed, and power. And that's what I kind of like about this film in regards to the human nature of, again, you can have all the rules in play, but as soon as the adults are gone, things kind of turn on its head. And I kind of like how the film explores that particular aspect. And there's other different parallels and things that you can relate to in the real world that I like that the film kind of explores. But let's kind of dive into the performances. Our three main leads in this film consist of Tye Sheridan, you have Lily Rose Depp, and you have Flynn Whitehead. Now, when it comes to Tye Sheridan, I like him as a young actor. I much more prefer his performances when he was younger, like Mud and Joe. Some of his other big blockbuster films, like when he's in the X-Men films, I don't think it allowed him to kind of flex his acting muscle. Even the film that I love, Ready Player One, he really doesn't. I don't love the film because of Wade and Tye Sheridan. I love the film because I enjoy the film for what it is and nostalgia factor. So him in this film, he's fine. He's a leader in the sense that he doesn't necessarily want to take the mantle of what's given upon him in this film. And you kind of see his journey throughout the movie. I thought he was okay. Really, the standout for me personally is Lily Rose. She plays a character in this film that she's a reluctant leader, but she sees the things that need to be done. But of course, the other kids in this movie aren't on the same page as she is. But Lily, as a young actress, I've only seen her in a handful of Kevin Smith films and she was recently, I think it was 2 years ago, film on Netflix by the name of The King with her and Timothée Chalamet. She had a really small role in that film, but she left a really good impression on me. So I really liked her performance in this role. And again, most of the performances were fine. Nothing was like Oscar-winning performances, but she was probably the best character in my eyes, which leads us into Flynn Whitehead, who plays Zach, who is the guy that kind of sparks some turmoil and sparks some interesting conversations within this film. And I've only seen this young actor in Dunkirk, and he was pretty stereotypical, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I thought that those three main leads, we followed them the most, and for the most part, I thought the performances were okay. But going back to me being a sci-fi fan, I really enjoyed how the film has a lot of sci-fi elements in regards to the score. I love me a good space sci-fi movie, and when you can give me a score that really kind of breathes the life of the sci-fi elements into the film, that I really appreciate that. And I definitely want to applaud the composer Trevor Gureckis in bringing that score to life and really bringing out those sci-fi elements, and also the other production aspects of the film. I thought the design of the ship was pretty interesting. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like movies like Alien and Aliens, where this is a huge ship, but when things kind of hit the fan and we have two different groups that kind of go in their own paths, the one group that want to follow the rule and the other groups that want to just wild out and be teenagers, we see how this ship is so big, but things go bad and the ship becomes smaller and smaller, and the sense of isolation like Aliens and Aliens kind of plays within this film, which I appreciated. And lastly, I applaud this film for not wasting time. Within the first 10 minutes, we learn what's happening to humankind and why we have to go to this new planet and how these kids are set up in this program. So I like how within the first 10 minutes, we're just like off into space. So I really appreciate that aspect. But with that still being said, unfortunately, transitioning into my criticism with the film, I think the biggest issues with this movie for me was very predictable story, but also some very poor direction in regards to directing these actors and giving us a conveyed and a true authentic performance in their roles. I'll say this, when it comes to these kids and taking command and taking control, the film has this interesting premise. I think the first half, the setup of this film is really interesting and really the strongest elements of the film. But as things kind of unfold in regards to tackling the human nature of sex, greed, and power, it gives you the absolute bare minimum in the development in that premise. There was so much they could have dove into, but the director and the script just really, the director of this film, who's also the writer, Neil Berger, just really kind of limits the film to just the bare minimums of what you expect in that type of story. We see these two groups of kids, again, the kids that want to follow the rules and the kids that don't want to follow the rules. And in that, we see the extreme, just the bland, generic, stereotypical characters. We have the bad kid, Zach, who wants to do all the sex and have greed and have power. And he has his little lynchmen that just follow him and just blindly follow him. And then on the opposite side, you have Lily and Tye Sheridan's character. They're the good characters, and it's very traditional. It's very cookie cutter in regards to once they split off into groups, there's no interesting complexities to the characters. There's very to the book, and it relies so heavily on tropes that you've seen a million times in film. And I mentioned the acting was fine for our three main characters, but when it comes to the supporting characters, it's a mixture of two things. I think that there's a direction that was given to them that wasn't that good, because for most of the movie, the performances are supposed to be kind of dull because they're emotionless, right? Because they're test tube babies. They really don't know how to interact with, real life situations, or in this case, being in space and the mission that's on hand. So I understand why some of the actors are a little bit kind of lifeless. But as the film goes on, they continue to be lifeless. And I blame that on the direction of Neil Berger, but also some of the performances were not that great, especially when we get to like the critical moments in this film. I felt like they were just literally emotionless when they're supposed to be alive and supposed to have these kind of really kind of, character driven moments that just didn't deliver for me personally. And also I mentioned Colin Farrell's in this film. It's not enough Colin Farrell in this movie. This, to me, I think Colin Farrell shot this movie and Artemis Fowl like back to back, because he's like probably had to work like 2 days max on both films. He got a check and he made his way onto the set into the Batman, which is taking like 3 years to make. So Colin Farrell, there wasn't enough of his character, and I wish that he was more involved in the story. I know why he's not that heavily involved, but it would have been, to me, more interesting if he was more involved in the script. And lastly, this film is about 1 hour and 47 minutes, but I honestly think if it was about 1 hour and 30, it would have been much more tighter, more cohesive, and it would have been a more clean and solid film if they would have trimmed off about 15 to 18 minutes off of the movie. So before I give you all my overall thoughts and my score, make sure to like the video, share the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments, as well as subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you can get the alert when I drop new content. So overall, this film has all the basic story outlines that you've seen before in a sci-fi movie, and it does explore the human nature elements and shows what happens when the true nature comes out. The setup in the first half are the strongest points of the film, but unfortunately, the film goes down a path of stereotypical storytelling in a YA film and has some really dull performances and honestly a mediocre, predictable conclusion. With that being said, I'll give Voyagers a 2.5 out of 5. Now, this film right now is only slated to come out in theaters this Friday. I'm not one to tell you how to spend your money. I personally want to see this in theaters, especially now after seeing it. But I would say if this becomes available sooner rather than later on streaming, give it a watch. And when you do, let me know what you all thought of it. As always, make sure to like the video, share the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you've seen this film, let me know your pros, your cons, your favorite performances, some of the stuff you wish was a little bit more ironed out. Let's discuss it in the comments. As always, subscribe and hit the notification bell because I have a lot of reviews coming in the coming days. We have Thunder Force later today, or tomorrow I should say, the next episode of Invincible, of course, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, and a couple other things coming pretty soon. So make sure you all are subscribed to the channel. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review. We'll see you in the next video.